Hey all, this is Kasank Ma Keperu, and today I want to talk to you about why you should be working with ancestral spirits. Now, this is a really big topic, and I'm going to go into a couple of really good points that will show you why you should work with them, how to work with them, and what our modern day society has done to kind of steer us clear of all of that. So let me start out by saying that you have a history that precedes your birth here on this planet, your physical birth. And you've had many, many past lives, and you've gone through a lot of stuff, and your spirit kind of retains some of that knowledge. But the most important thing you should understand about that is that there is a link between what happened prior and what's going on in your life. Now, many people will encounter things like they're going through trouble, difficulties, but whether it be financial, relationship, and they're wondering like, why are these things coming and hitting them? Because they've tried to live a really good life. They've bothered no one. They've always been very spiritual, very religious, yet all of these things are coming and assaulting them. And the reason being is because in our society, we don't have a holistic view of life, meaning we don't understand that the way things are today are either due through pre-life agreements or through what has happened to you in the past life, because what you have done in the past life has set you up for the way things will unfold in this life. It would be unfair for someone to go this entire life committing all kinds of heinous crimes, without having to pay the price for that. And one of the ways that you pay the price for that is through karma. And what that means is that it's setting you up for your next life and what you will experience. If you're in this life a perpetrator where you're doing all of these crimes, robbing banks, killing people, in your next life you're going to possibly, not guaranteed, be a victim. So you can experience what being a victim of a crime could be like. So your spirit can gain the knowledge and understanding. And that's a lot of what it's about, is that your spirit is looking for experience. And the way it has experience is it takes on these multitude of characters that it plays. In one life you'll be a father, another life you'll be, a head of state, another life you'll be a poor man, another life you'll be a very important, influential woman in politics, another life you'll be a woman who's a movie star. So you're playing all these roles because you want to experience this fourth dimensional reality. At the same time, what you're doing in that life is setting you up for what will unfold in the next life, as I said before. The problem that we get into is that we forget that we form associations and work, and that there are people in those past lives who can assist us and guide us through this lifetime. So, the modern media, through the various institutions like, Hollywood, universities, try to, and the religious institutions, of course, try to steer us away from any type of contact or communication with spirits or ancestors. That's the one thing they don't want us to do. And you have to understand, we live in a controlled environment, a matrix. And in that matrix, they have set up these institutions to make sure that they control the narrative. The narrative is that anything dealing with the subconscious mind, the spirit, meditation is evil. Anything dealing with ancestors is evil unless we take it, redefine it, and label it as angels. You know what I mean? Then it's okay. Because again, the religious institutions, whether it's Catholicism, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, have been purposely set up to steer you away from occult practices to where the power lies. And the Illuminati, they are masters of the occult. Meanwhile, they're teaching you to steer away from it, and they're venturing into that area and mastering it, because we know that your power lies in you, realization of the God, woman, God, man of who you are. So they have to make sure that you never come to that realization, because you would then control your destiny. But now let's go back to what I was saying, that your ancestors exists. And what we know is that there is no past, there's no future, there's only the present now moment. And in that present now moment, you have access to your past, to your future, to everything, because it's all combined into one moment. Time is an illusion. So you have access to to commune with your ancestors because they had a particular way of life they wanted you to live, a particular culture, a particular perspective on things, and they want you to continue that ancestral lineage. They don't want you to abandon the culture that they put in place. For example, we know that the predominant culture of the past was right brain. So our ancestors who built the pyramids, who built all type of wonderful monuments, had all of that knowledge and wisdom that they still wanted to keep with us, but the Illuminati tried to eliminate all that. So the ancestors are waiting to share that knowledge with us. I see a lot of the people in the African American community, scholars, are always talking about read these books. And well, reading a book about the way your ancestors lived in the past, whether it be from the Jewish Holocaust, slavery, what have you, it's a very flat, one-dimensional understanding. When you go into a trance state, which is meditation, to try and communicate with your ancestors who are still existing in that space-time continuum, what you're doing is that you're becoming aware and you are re-experiencing everything. You're gaining experiential knowledge. You're not just reading a book. And that is far more vast than just words on a paper, because we know that words, the verbal communication that we engage in, is very limited in communicating the different array of emotions and things that exist in our world, the multitude of emotions. So words are very limiting, which is why our ancestors, when they spoke in vibrational tonalities, tones, because those vibrational tones communicated emotions. So you understood based on the energy what was going on, because, as I said before, certain words cannot convey certain things. This is why people in different languages have a challenge translating certain things into the English language, because they're thinking, well, you don't have a word for that. There's a word for it in my language, but you don't have a word for it in your language, so it's not a one-to-one correlation to where I can just translate it for you. So I want you to think about that. Now, what Hollywood does is they'll come out with all these movies, and it's so ridiculous, to where, every time they deal with an ancestor or ghost or spirit, it's always evil. And the way to eradicate that is through either Catholic priest or Christian priest who will come in with the Bible and say some verses, and then they would get rid of the spirit. Never do you look at the fact that there has to be a reason why the spirit is there in the first place, why it's invading your home, or why you're invading its home. And you need to work out with that spirit what it wants, what it needs, so you can open up the channels of communication. Not all spirits are there evil, even demons have a place. God made it so that the demons, or nectar or source, made it so that demons serve a specific function. And we know that there's nothing that has a quality in and of itself, as Tahuti says. So everything serves a purpose, and demons serve a purpose. So not that I'm saying you should work with demons. You have to be very careful with that. But what I'm saying is you have to start looking at things as not as polarized. We talked about the Hegelian dialectic between, you either left or you're right. There's nothing in between. You have to start looking at things in terms of shades of gray and looking at the wider array of things, and from a cosmological perspective, saying that everything has its place, everything has its function. When you start thinking out the left brain, which is polarized thinking and segregated thinking, then you seek to say, well, this is opposite of this, so therefore it is my enemy, therefore it is evil, I must eradicate it. And then that opens the door to racism, to partisan politics, to all this other stuff. So you have to start thinking in a more cosmological, holistic perspective, that everything has a right to be here and everything has its place, and that you need to understand what it needs to fulfill its base needs in order to live harmoniously with it. So this whole idea of your house is haunted and you have a Christian minister, a Catholic minister, who will come in and then suddenly exorcise the place and get rid of the spirit is really erroneous. It's stupid, because it's there to institute the dominant narrative, which is that you shouldn't be messing with the spirit world, that the spirit world is evil, that there are no good spirits, that the ancestors aren't there to help you. And your ancestors contain a lot of enriched knowledge and wisdom that if you communicate with them, they will pass that on to you and make your life so complete, so much more holistic. And again, this life is a direct result of your past life. So if you're wondering why things happening to you in this life, you have to start looking at the past life, which again, the Illuminati does not want us to do. Now, we talked about the left and the right brain. The right brain is how you will gain access to your ancestors through the practice of meditation. And there are the books out there. that you can tune into that will talk about meditation that you can read. Now, I want you to understand how limiting thinking out of the left brain is, because the left brain is where we do most of our conscious work. You know what I mean? This is how we perceive the world, is through the left brain, which is a very segregated thought process. There's a really good book out here that I want you guys to tune into. It's called Synchronicity by Dr. Kirby Surprise, I think that's his name. Yeah. And there's actually a page in here that I thought was really summed up a lot, where it said that Western culture is based on quantitative reasoning. Thinking this way, an event involving a house should require more energy than one involving a die. Western thought is reliable but limited. It tries to achieve objectivity at the expense of more holistic and associative thought. Synchronicity events have a logic of its own, association and relationship from which meaning is derived. These are dependent upon the individual's thoughts and experiences of the environment in which they are formed, Many religious systems talk about extra-physical reality with which a person forms an innate or intimate relationship. In the West, many have turned to Taoism, Tantra, and Aboriginal spirituality in search of this connection to the universe. Western culture has relegated this kind of unified consciousness primarily to mystics and heretics. Instead of being unusual, synchronicity events should be seen as a state when the true connection that should exist between the inner and outer worlds is functioning normally. So what I want you to understand is we're talking about that the left brain doesn't have the capacity to think holistically, doesn't have the capacity to think that what happened prior in a lifetime, or conceive the idea of reincarnation, is directly affecting what's going on. But more importantly, with synchronicity, if you guys don't know what that is like what we tend to see as a coincidence, things happening. Carl Jung coined it as synchronicity. But what basically got involved, which our ancestors really engaged in, was seeing the universe as one, seeing the outer world as one with the inner world. So if they were to look up and see, like, for example, clouds in the sky forming some type of shape, they saw that as an omen, either of good or bad, or maybe there'll be, like, for example, a prosperous season for them, or there'll be drought. So they saw everything as having meaning and everything connected. And that is important because that brings about, again, the idea of holistic thinking. And that's why communicating with your ancestral spirits is more of holistic thinking, because you see it as a continuum. You see it as, I'm just continuing the previous life by communing with my ancestors, by finding out the type of world they wanted me to live in, the culture. And the problem that we're seeing today in a lot of the minority communities is there's a lack of culture, a lack of understanding of the history, not from history books, but of communion with the ancestors. That they don't know how to live their life, so what they do is they engage in camaraderie with gangs, camaraderie with the underworld, and now we have all this violence and gang violence and police shootings and things of that nature. When the one thing that's needed, that's the cohesive element, is culture. Culture provides guidance, and it also provides power, because the ancestors can bring you a wealth of power. We see the Illuminati doing this now because they're communicating with ancestral spirits to gain a knowledge of the future and future events. They're manipulating the space-time continuum through these spirits. And if we have a knowledge of this, if we were to really dive deep into this, we could use that power for our benefit. But it's very difficult because you have the masses of society who've been indoctrinated into the left brain thinking, and the control mechanism, which are the major universities, the religious institutions, the media, have all conspired to push you away from meditation and communion with the ancestors. So it's the difference between experiencing something and reading about it. Experiencing something is a far more grasp on a subject matter than actually reading about it. And this is exactly what we need to do, and we're not engaged in that. This society is caught up on just acquisition of knowledge, but not wisdom. We're caught up on just reading books, which is okay. But at some point, you need to experience that information. And experience comes from Ma'at. Ma'at says, the goddess of truth and justice, that to know truth, you have to live life, meaning you have to live it. You can't read it. You can't theorize about it. It has to be a living, breathing experience for you. So I want you to start thinking about, who are my ancestors? Now, You may not know. That's all right. But the way to take that first step in that right direction is to start meditating daily. Meditating daily and thinking about your past, your ancestors, what may have happened to you in your former life, even though you may know nothing about this, will open the subconscious mind to that communication process. And the next things that you will see is, if you start being observant, and that's very important to start looking around life, is you will see coincidences. You will see shapes, forms, symbols that are trying to tell you something. This is a direct indication that the communication has started. Now, if you ignore these things, if you don't see the connection in these things, or you think they're merely coincidences, then you will lose the rich meaning for which they are. So start thinking more or less like everything has a meaning. When you do your meditations, directly after your meditations, analyze your dreams. Start looking at these symbols that you see more often. Are you seeing the color red a lot? Does it come up a lot? Or are you suddenly meeting a lot of older women, in their 70s and 80s? Why is that? Is that a symbol for an ancestral spirit coming through these women? Start thinking about that. And when you become aware of these things, you engage the right brain, and the right brain wants to see connections in everything. And then you start to have that holistic perspective, and then you start to open the channels to where an ancestor will come through and start to directly communicate with you. Now, the ways in which they'll directly communicate with you is varied. It could be through a direct communication, which you'll hear an auditory voice in your head. It could be that they communicate more or less through emotions or symbols or ideas. And sometimes it gets very advanced where they'll start to make certain coincidences happen to put you at the right place at the right time so that you can follow along with the path that they intend for you. But I want you to understand, in closing this, that the world is not supposed to be the way we see it today, which is this left brain controlled matrix lab experiment that we're in. It was supposed to be an enriched experience of spirituality and holistic thinking. Our reality has been co-opted and taken over. A coup d'etat has happened by the ruling elite, and now we're living in a matrix where our ideas are controlled, our thinking is controlled. We don't have the freedom that we should have, and we're cut off from our ancestors. So let's re-engage and re-experience our past lineage and understand how we should be moving toward the future. This is Kasakma Kaparu, and thank you for joining. And if you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel to get more videos that are similar to this topic. So again, Kasakma Kaparu, and that's all for now. Thank you.